Am I the a-hole for not planning anything for Father's Day after my husband ruined my first Mother's Day? I'm 98.7% sure that I am not the a-hole here, but I'm wrong. I'm willing to admit it and learn from my mistakes. Our little boy will be one late this summer, so this was the first Mother's Day and Father's Day for both me and my husband. My husband asked what I wanted for Mother's Day. I didn't want/need anything big or expensive. What I asked for is for husband to get up with the little guy and get him fed while I pumped and chilled. Breakfast in bed, just toast, scrambled eggs, and coffee. For us to take the little guy to the zoo for the first time. This was the main thing I was looking forward to. Go to my fave taco place for dinner. Between morning and afternoon naps, we have about 4 hours of awake time. The zoo is ABT 30 minutes away, so I had figured if we left as soon as he got up from his nap and ate, we'd have a couple hours at the zoo and, worst case, he could sleep in the car on the way home. We took my mom and my mother-in-law out to brunch the prior weekend to celebrate them, his mom on Saturday and my mom on Sunday. I also got them each a thoughtful little present and flowers to celebrate their first Mother's Day as grandparents. I arranged everything and told my mom and mother-in-law that we'd be celebrating on the actual day with just our little family and sent them a group chat, which included husband, my dad, and father-in-law, just to make sure everyone is on the same page. My mother-in-law is very pushy and overbearing, so I didn't want there to be any surprises or confusion. The Saturday before Mother's Day, father-in-law sent my husband a text with a picture of all the mulch he just had delivered and said something like, "Gonna be a busy weekend," or something like that. Apparently, he had 300 bags of mulch. They have a big yard with lots of flower beds. That night, my mother-in-law called my husband and asked him to come over first thing in the morning to help his dad move the bags of mulch to where they were going to be used. She said since we weren't going to the zoo until after little guy's nap, that husband could go over and help for a couple hours and then come pick us up to go to the zoo. I was obviously not happy, but she guilted him and said father-in-law was going to end up hurting himself if he moved all that by himself and that it's not a big deal and should only take an hour or two. I told him his mom was doing this to try and get us to skip our plans and spend the day with them, but he kept saying it's not a big deal, saying his mom promised it would only take a couple hours, etc., etc. I think most people know what happened. Husband went over first thing, which means no breakfast in bed, and I had to get up to feed the little guy. I was kinda pissed, but whatever. Spent time with the little guy. Then when he went down for his morning nap, I texted my husband to let him know he should start wrapping things up. Then when little guy woke up 2 hours later, I called husband to tell him I'd be ready to go as soon as I finished feeding the little guy. He told me it was taking longer than he expected, but that he'd hurry. Like an hour and a half later, husband called and said they weren't done, but he was getting ready to come home. It's 15 to 20 minute drive from mother-in-law/father-in-law's house. At that point, we'd missed the window to make it to zoo, so I told him to just stay there and finish and not worry about Mother's Day since he hadn't done a single thing I asked for. I don't think there was any doubt in his mind how pissed I was. A little later, his mom called and said since we decided not to go to the zoo, that me and little guy should go hang out with her while the boys finished with the mulch. I admit that I was pretty pissy and told her I had no interest in spending time with the people who decided to ruin my first Mother's Day. I ended up staying home and ordering a pizza and binging Netflix. When husband got home, he was all apologetic and asked how he could make it up. I was still pissed and told him he could make it up by not ruining my first Mother's Day. I also told him he should plan on spending Father's Day with his mom and dad because me and the little guy were going to go celebrate Father's Day with my mom and dad. Since Mother's Day, mother-in-law has been texting and calling, but I've been keeping conversations short and just giving very bland generic responses. My husband has been apologizing and asking what he can do, but honestly, I don't want to bother. I know it's just a day and we can celebrate anytime, like we did with my mom and mother-in-law. But it was my first ever Mother's Day. And it's not like I asked for anything expensive or difficult. The only difficult thing is he's incapable of setting boundaries with his mom. And she's incapable of considering anyone's feelings but her own. This past Saturday, he asked if I was still going to my parents', then said he'd like to go with us. I told him he could do whatever he wanted, but since I hadn't done anything for his dad, he might want to go see him or something. We did both end up going to my parents and spending the day with them. It was actually a nice day. My dad insisted on grilling because of course he did, but the weather ended up being nice, and we spent a lot of time hanging out on their deck playing with the little guy. I'm not sure what if anything my husband did for his dad. I know he was getting a lot of texts during the day, I assume from his mom. She did send me a snippy text saying it was hurtful to spend the day with my family at the expense of husband's, but I told her she got to spend Mother's Day with her baby boy, so it's only fair that I spend Father's Day with my family. I know my husband was hurt that we didn't acknowledge him for Father's Day, but I told him while we were driving to my parents' house that I'm just matching his energy. I admit that I haven't done anything to de-escalate the drama, but I'm still just so hurt he continues to prioritize his mom's feeling over our little family. This isn't the first time his mom has done crap like this, and I'm just so tired of it. She always oversteps and insists on doing what she wants. I'm doing better at keeping her at arm's length and holding my own boundaries, but my husband is absolutely incapable of it. Update. This weekend the husband and I sat down and talked about everything. I expressed to him how incredibly upset and disappointed I was at how both Mother's Day and Father's Day went down. I really wanted to recognize and celebrate my husband for Father's Day every bit as much as I hoped he would recognize and celebrate me for Mother's Day. He said he knew he shouldn't have gone to his parents on Mother's Day, but didn't know what to do since his mom was pressuring him and saying if his dad got hurt it would be husband's fault. He admitted that he knew he messed up and has been terrified that I was going to ask for a divorce. Since he cut to the chase, I told him that if this is how our life is going to be, I don't want to stay married to him. I explained to him that I realized that while yes, I was upset about what happened on Mother's Day, that isn't what is making me feel this way. That was just the straw that broke the camel's back. This kind of behavior from his mom has been happening since we before got engaged and has just escalated. This has been happening for years. As someone here suggested, I had listed all the times/events that I could remember that she had overstepped or just completely ruined. For our freaking honeymoon, she called him twice a day. Every morning to find out our plans for the day, and then every evening to hear how the day went. Plus the constant texting, asking for pictures, telling him how much she missed him. I don't know how I thought this was acceptable. She tried to make our wedding about herself, tried to make my pregnancy about herself, tried to take over when we brought our son home, just constantly inserting herself and overstepping. I told him that I don't really want to get divorced right now, but if it's going to happen anyway, I'd rather get divorced now while we can still do it amicably. Because if nothing changes, I'm going to end up so angry and resentful that it would make divorce very contentious, and I don't want that for our son. At this point, we were both crying, upset, and emotional. So I told him that I'll give him some time to decide what he's going to do, but if I don't see clear effort being made to start prioritize me and our son, that I'd move forward with the divorce. And the change has to continue. Every time we've fought about this in the past, he's promised he'll change, and sometimes he has, but then his mom pulls him back into her orbit. If we are to stay married, these are some of the things I'm insisting on in no particular order. We each own the relationship with our own parents. That means I'm not planning anything for his parents anymore. No cards, no presents, no brunches or parties, no pictures, nothing. If his parents reach out to me, I'm going to redirect them to him. I'm not entertaining or visiting with his parents when he's not around. I'm not taking our son over to theirs by myself. And if they drop by, I'm not inviting them in unless my husband is there. I'm not changing my plans at the last minute just because they decided to drop by without coordinating with us in advance or because they want us to do something with them. Neither of us makes plans with our parents or accepts invitations until we discuss with our partner. And if we don't both agree, that we don't do it. And we don't throw each other under the bus. We just say something like, we checked our schedule and we're not available. Holidays like Christmas, Halloween, Easter, etc. are at our house. We can discuss inviting our parents, but we're not going to someone else's house to celebrate something involving our son when we can do it at home. This includes his first birthday, which mother-in-law is trying to take over and plan. Other holidays we'll alternate between our parents. And we will focus on being present. That means no more texting/talking to his mom nonstop when we're with my parents. No more oversharing with mother-in-law. She doesn't need to know about our finances or health/medical issues or vacation plans or anything unless we both agree it's something we want to share. His visits to his parents can't be at the expense of spending quality time with me and our son. I don't mind him visiting his parents, but he's over there a couple times a week. We are his immediate family now. We should get priority. We're not doing things just because she said we should. And we're not changing our plans just because she doesn't like them. She really doesn't understand that wrong and different are not the same thing. In her mind, if we're not doing what she wants, how she wants, then we are in the wrong. He needs to go to therapy with someone specializing in enmeshment. And we need to start going to couples therapy. I didn't even realize I have so much pent-up resentment that I can't look at my husband the same anymore. I'm just angry at him all the time and I hate being this way. When it comes to our son, our word, husband and me, is law. If she disregards or minimizes our decisions for our son, then she loses access until she learns to behave. When me or my husband say no to either set of parents, the other person will support them and back them up. That means my husband has to stop trying to get me to agree with his mom all the time. I can tell he's freaked out and really stressed about the idea of putting hard boundaries in place or distancing from his parents. And I do feel for him. He said he feels like he's caught between a rock and a hard place and that me and his mom are both putting a ton of pressure on him and both have conflicting expectations. And that's fine. He just needs to understand that I'm not tolerating this anymore. I know this will cause an absolute shitstorm with his parents, but I feel like if we don't do it now, it'll just be harder down the road. What does everyone think? Am I being unreasonable? Are there other boundaries we should put in place? Second update. I've had a lot of folks asking for an update, so here goes. First off, Thank you all to everyone who commented on my earlier posts, good and bad. It has been so helpful. Couple things I want to mention first. A lot of commenters have been saying that I knew what I was getting into when I married DH, so this whole thing is as much my fault as anyone else's, and if I didn't want a mama's boy, I shouldn't have married one. Yep, you are 100% correct. I ignored all the red flags, constantly told myself it would get better once we were engaged, then once we were married, then once we got pregnant, then once we had kids. And I think part of the issue is she's gotten worse over the years. It feels like one of those frog in a pot of boiling water situations. I don't deny I put myself into this situation, but the fact is we're here now, so we need to get it figured out. A lot of other commenters said my list of rules was crazy and I'm just as bad as his mom. Maybe I am, more on that later, but I don't think there is anything about my boundaries that is unreasonable, and there is nothing there that I expect from him and his parents that I don't also expect from myself and my parents. I've said repeatedly, they all boil down to the same basic thing, showing each other respect and consideration. I'm not saying he can't see his parent or that they can't come visit or anything like that. I'm saying that his parents don't get to have priority over us and our little family, and neither do my parents. First, the good. My husband ended up surprising me with a trip out of town. He took me and Elo down to San Antonio for a long weekend. We had been pre-kid and really enjoyed staying on the Riverwalk and doing all the touristy stuff even though we only live a few hours away. Husband ended up really stressed and kept apologizing because obviously this trip was much different. It felt more like a military expedition with all the gear we took for little one, and it wasn't nearly as romantic since we had a pack and play next to the bed. But I kept reminding him that what was important, to me at least, was that he took the initiative to plan something on his own and try to make up for Mother's Day. Even though it wasn't exactly what Hubs was hoping for, I had a really, really good time and enjoyed spending time with my two guys, and I expressed that to him. And to his credit, husband didn't answer when his mom called or spend all day texting her. I know he paid for it when we got back because I heard them on the phone, and it sounded like she was reading him the riot act for not telling them we were going, not inviting them along, and not answering when she called. I'm going to do something for him as a belated Father's Day, and we're going to try to build different, better memories of our first Mother's Day/Father's Day, even if it's after the fact. More good stuff. Husband and I both have individual therapists we've been seeing weekly for the past several weeks, as well as a couples therapist we have been seeing weekly together. And I'm going back to work full-time next week, so little one has been going to daycare part-time to help him acclimate. The first day was pretty traumatic, more for me than for little one. But he's been adjusting well and seems happy when I pick him up after lunch. This is a huge point of contention with mother-in-law because she wants to babysit, but I've said absolutely not because she won't respect any of our rules or boundaries. I've also been following through on my list of boundaries on my last post. I'm not nice, but I guess the term is I've dropped the rope. Now the bad. For little one's first birthday, I was planning something small and casual at our house. Just our parents and a few close friends. Like 10 to 15 people max, counting me and husband. I was going to make a smash cake for little one and more grown-up type food snacks/dessert for us and guests. I was planning some low-key decorations because, let's be honest, this kind of party is for the adults. Kiddo isn't going to remember any of it, so I didn't want to go overboard. Mother-in-law hated everything about it and wanted to do it at her house, invite all her friends and relatives, serve more kid-centric food, get a store-bought cake with all that super sweet icing, and go nuts with decorations. I told her no, absolutely not. Our kid, our house, our plans. She went crying to my husband, and he tried to talk me into letting her have her way. This has been a constant theme. Mother-in-law oversteps, I complain, husband puts up boundaries, and then just as quickly husband forgets about the boundaries. We were able to talk about this in one of our early couples sessions, and it was pretty enlightening. I'm sure all the people saying husband just ended up marrying some just like his mom will be gratified to know our counselor said, OP can have a forceful personality. So yeah, I'm bossy/pushy/opinionated/etc. How it came up is we were talking about the party, and I was saying what I wanted to do, and why I didn't want to let my mother-in-law take over, etc., and husband was trying to explain why we should accommodate mother-in-law. The therapist interrupted us and asked husband what he wanted to do. Husband started talking about my plan versus his mom's plan, and the therapist stopped him and asked again what he wants. Based on his reaction, I don't think anyone has ever seriously asked him that. He had a complete deer in headlights look, and I really thought he was going to bolt or start crying or both. How we ended it is, if he truly doesn't have an opinion or doesn't care, then he should probably defer to his wife, approach. He shouldn't delegate his right to decide to his mom. If he really want to do it her way, then he needs to express that and say he wants to do it her way because he really wants to do it her way as opposed to doing it her way just to avoid upsetting her. Or if he wants something completely different, he needs to express that. But his mom's opinion is not and cannot take precedence. Nothing wrong with her expressing her opinion and him agreeing, but that needs to be an active process as opposed to him just doing something because she said so. That was followed up by a conversation about how I have strong thoughts and opinions, and I need to give him room to have his own. So rather than saying, I want to do X and then expecting him to agree or disagree, I need to say something like, for little one's birthday, I have some ideas, but I'd like to hear what you think first so we can decide together. We did end up doing the party the way I wanted because my husband took the therapist's advice and deferred to me since he didn't have an opinion. Mother-in-law was super pissy about the whole thing and ended up bringing a sheet cake despite me telling her multiple times not to. We didn't serve it during the party because boundaries, which pissed her off. My husband and I have been munching on it as a late-night snack after putting little one to bed, and because of how insanely sweet the icing is, I'm glad I stuck to my guns. I feel better because I've put distance between myself and mother-in-law, and I'm not worrying about pissing her off, so I'm not walking on eggshells anymore. But I don't know if I'm any more confident about whether our marriage will survive. I'm realizing that my husband has deferred to other people, mother-in-law and me, for so long he has a hard time having his own thoughts and opinions. I do still love him very much, and I'm not as mad as I was when I first posted. Now I'm more sad for him, and I'm starting to understand him better. But I don't know if he can change. I know she is complaining to him because I haven't been kowtowing to her, and I haven't been visiting on my own or changing plans when they drop by unexpectedly, but I'm not pushing him to establish his own boundaries yet. I think he needs to do more work so he can decide what he wants out of all this. All that to say, we're still working through it, and I don't know what's going to happen. That's all for today. Thank you for watching.